all over again.
Mhm.
For those of you us who are joining, we didn't go live the first time, so this is my second time to do this. Uh, this is the Modern Job Search Checklist. We stream on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. We do this every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 o'clock Central. So hopefully you'll be able to catch any of those platforms that you favor. With me, of course, my co-host is Damian Burkle up there on the top. He has led more than 10,000 people to the promised land of jobs and finding jobs and helping with their job search. She's also has authored a couple of books. And Daisy Wright is here with us as our guest today. She is a certified career management coach from Toronto or the suburbs of Toronto, she told me. The Right Career, of course, you see her information there. Of course, you go to LinkedIn. All you do is just hover over with the arrow and you can follow her profile right away. How are you, Daisy?
I am very well. Thank you, Mark. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad to be here with you and Damien today.
Yes. And Damon, you're doing well?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much.
Good deal. All right, they followed the script so far. So let's get let's get down to the subject. Who do you want to work for, and where are the two questions? Really, if you know that much, that guides your job search a whole lot better than not knowing where you want to go and that you're really a specialist in everything and for everybody, or that you're willing to learn. Trust me, that makes a world of difference. So we're going to tackle some topics to help get you started on your job search if you're just starting or continuing. So be sure you put your questions in the chat. Let us know that you're here. Let us know who you are, where you're from. Some of you join us weekly. I know who you are, and I'll try to identify you during the show. So be patient if we don't mention you right away or mention your question. So we'll have a flow to this, and you'll see how this works. Is that this is the first time you've ever been with us? We're talking again about who do you want to work for and where. Um, First, let's just talk about the studies are showing that the most flexible employee will win the day. That's what employers want, according to a recent study that we've been looking at. Will the most flexible employee be the most attractive to work for? Let's start with Daisy.
Yeah, of course. Of course. The most attractive employer is going to be the one that pretty much caters to the employees of today. And one of the things that we're looking at is that the hybrid work is pretty much here to stay.
Mhm.
And with some of the research that I have read, employees are making up their minds now to resign from their jobs if the employer is not offering some type of flexibility. So definitely that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Damien?
Yeah, the research that Daisy is talking about, and a parallel study that I found in Forbes, uh, the flexible work week, either hybrid, meaning a couple days in the office, 3 days at home, or completely remote, has now become the number one benefit that job seekers are looking for. And in that study, that came out to 87% of those that were surveyed said that that was the single most important thing that they were looking for. And to add to that, not only are employees, potential employees, looking for that flexibility, but so is the employer, because of the fact that this is a very dynamic situation that we're in. People are starting to go back to work, and the workforce and potentially their position requirements may have shifted just because of everything that's gone on. And so my point is that flexibility is a two-way street.
Yeah, and I just wonder, as you were talking, Damien, maybe you can help broaden. I'll come back to you, Daisy, in a moment about
Mhm.
what is considered flexible? And we're not just talking about time, are we?
No, we're not. I mean, people have different work styles, and what working from home has done is given the world an opportunity to adjust their working day to their bio clock,
Mm-hmm.
uh, for lack of a better term. And what that means is uh, parents have had an opportunity to work and manage their children. People that need to get work done, the studies have shown have no problem not only being more productive, but doing a 10-hour day just to get the work done. And flexibility for me, Mark and Daisy, means that the organization that you're working for recognizes your individual work style and does not force you into the you must be here on site at 9 o'clock and you can not leave until 5 o'clock at night. And having this newfound flexibility that was forced upon us uh, because of COVID-19, again, people do not want to be forced back into that rigid work style. And as a result, I read another article, 30% of all information technology people are planning to resign because they have discovered how important being able to work according to their flow, how important that is. And the work gets done. As a matter of fact, people are more productive at home than they are in work. And if a manufacturer or a company is going to be absolutely rigid, they're going to lose their hardest working leading employees out to other employers that are more flexible, which brings us back to our topic. Mark?
Yeah, and you
Mhm.
know the two terms that we should keep in mind here. We know it through learning, but I think through working is going to be very significant, and that's asynchronous and synchronous.
Mm-hmm.
Asynchronous, we know what synchronous means, but at the same time, that's what we're used to. But what we're not used to in the world, universal, is asynchronous, where people are working in staggered or at different times. So what's been most effective apparently is the asynchronous part. And now going back to the synchronous, we may see a shift again. Your thoughts on this, Daisy?
Well, thank you. I was reading a report by PricewaterhouseCoopers, and it says that only 9% of those who can work remotely want to go back to traditional work environment. Only 9%. 72% would prefer a mixture of in-person and remote working. And I think that's what's going to happen. Now, what might end up happening when we have so many people preferring to work at home, there's a downside to that
Mm-hmm.
because our managers or our supervisors may end up thinking that we're operating on 24-hour all, we're cutting 24-hour all-nighters, and that's not good for us either. So we have to be careful. Those of us who are thinking of, yes, it's great to be working from home, we also have to be mindful that, be careful of what we ask for, because the boundaries, we have to create boundaries, and managers, employers also need to do that. Don't expect your employee to be available
Mhm.
at 11 o'clock at night to send an email or to send out a report. So there's going to be, we have to find a balance between working from home and working and going back to the office, as well as if we're working from home, then let's put up some barriers and respect uh, those barriers.
Mhm.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think that um, there's the caveats. that we talked about on the show before about how employers really want to approach this. And of course, I've read the same studies that Damian's read and as you've read that people are a whole lot more productive at home. Uh, but I think there's going to be a day of reckoning here is that when you're going back to having the lights on and having the air on and having all these different costs here, there are companies that also made a profit, large profits during this particular time. So
Mhm.
is who is going back to work and will it benefit them? But mostly for the job seeker is that they can be choosier now as they begin to watch and to see who's going to be the first one to draw blood first. You know what I mean,
Mhm. Mhm.
Damien?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Um, and again, as a job seeker, having a target list of employers that you want to work for is very important. And like Mark just said, monitoring their approach to their employees as they return into the workforce is going to be a very strong indicator of their culture
Hmm.
because if they treat their employees like adults and allow them the autonomy that they need to get their job done, that says one thing. Uh, if you are like a company here in town, which I won't mention, where you literally have to stand at your desk at 9 o'clock while the president of the company walks through to make sure
Mhm.
everybody's there, it's very kind of militaristic. That is not a place that I would want to work. And of course, that reputation goes before them. So, this is actually an opportunity for job seekers to find out more about a company now in a way that you could never do it before.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I could see how that militaristic attitude really is. It doesn't even have to be obvious. To the fact that you have to be somewhere sitting down at a specific time is pretty militaristic within itself. What do you think, Daisy?
Well, oh, I totally agree with both of you. And that's where research comes in. You have to have a target list and then, read through everything and find out which one would really meet your needs. And remember, because remote work is so popular, your employer can be
Hmm.
anywhere in the world. And because there's a competition, you can be paid probably twice. I have a client right now who was, even though it's not remote work that he's doing, but he got a job offer in the US that's paying him twice the salary that he was going to get here. So it's really, to some degree, it's a job seekers market, but it also makes sense to research companies and not be lured too much or altogether by the how much you'll be paid. Think of other things. What are the benefits? Will there be opportunities for career development? Those kind of things you have to make sure that you include when you're doing the research.
Yeah, I think in having talked to lead a bunch of leaders last year, or within the past year, a lot of them are thinking their own situation for the fact that they're now home and seeing that, hey, I got some real life issues at home, and
Mhm.
that I don't know if I can go back to the office myself.
Mhm.
Now, what's going to be interesting to see is how many CEOs and C-suite are working from home and making everybody else return to work. I wonder how much that's going to really affect. But Damien, is the thing that I'm thinking about too is that the ones who are really affected by the whole pandemic thing all around the world have been women, and particularly the single mothers have taken the brunt of whatever the all the exacerbated problems that existed. They got them. in full force. And to a certain degree, this is still a problem because not all daycare centers survived the pandemic. A lot of them went under because of the lack of having children there with them. So, how far reaching and will strategies need to be changed for job seekers who are in those particular groups who've taken, particularly single mothers? And we could probably start there. We even single fathers who also are taking those brunt as they're taking care of their own.
Yes, and I think the impact has been stratified, and by that I mean it depends on where you are, what you do, and how much income you make. In this case, having to stay at home with the kids if you're a single mom and are I don't know, a waitress. That's one thing, and returning back into the actual restaurant and having the kids at home with nobody isn't an option for you. So you are automatically looking for a different type of position. And you're right. So many companies, especially daycares, just closed and they're not going to open up again. And the impact on an entire group of people is such that they are being forced to either find a way to pay for daycare to maintain their job or continue to stay at home and either find a job that they can do working from home or a job that pays enough money to allow them to put their child or children into daycare. It is a huge challenge because, again, single mom, one income, multiple people to care for and love.
Yeah, and Daisy, those who are also going to be challenged by childcare, there are companies that are not going to necessarily pay if they move from the city of San Francisco to, let's say, Boise, Idaho, which is a much smaller market. Then they're going to be affected by the change in pay as well. You just kind of wonder how many other choices will a single mom have if she's not as diligent and researching at the beginning of their job search as opposed to
Mhm.
waiting till they get into the thick of things, because
Mhm.
really we don't think very well in the middle of our job searches. We're in that desperation mode many times, and I think many times single moms are going to be there too. Not just them. I mean, everybody's going to be there,
Everybody,
but
yeah.
really the strategy is going to be needs to be as thoughtful as ever has been.
It's being caught between a rock and a hard place because as parents we do have to, and like you said, single parents or single moms or single dads for that matter, and in some cases even both parents, depending on their economic level, they face that as well. And I think that's where employers will want to be more flexible,
Hmm.
allowing them, if possible, to work from home. I know in the restaurant industry, obviously, you cannot work from home, but in most of the other situations, that's where the flexibility is really, really needed because you cannot abandon your children; they are important, and at the
Mhm.
same time, you need money to survive. And how can the employer and the employee arrive at a happy medium to say, okay, I can, is it a situation where, one can probably go to work later in the day, or will they, some kind of arrangement will have to be made until things are sorted out. And you're so correct, it's they're really feeling the woman and mothers, young mothers, they're really feeling the pinch, and it's all up to us, even us as career practitioners, career coaches. How can we help them? Because then they end up in a situation, where, oh my god, how am I going to survive? And
Mhm.
we have to try to help them to put some strategies in place, something of some kind of a normalcy, to their situation, and think outside the norm. okay, how can I find another employer who would meet my needs? Or will they allow me to come in at 3 o'clock when my partner is home, and things like that. And that's going to be critical moving forward.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I really do think that's correct. And Elaine Santiago, thank you again for joining us, Elaine. She's a regular around here. She said she asked us a great question. She should you ask about working in the office versus remotely on a first interview?
Absolutely.
Yes.
I would say
Yes.
absolutely.
Yes,
I
and
mean,
not only that, but really you should be able to, with the tools that we have today, be able to find that out before you even apply for the job. You don't
mhm,
even have to wait for the first interview because people are talking about it all over the social networks. They're talking
mhm.
all about it on the news. People are asking that question to begin with. I mean, at least the ones that are really being thoughtful about it when they're starting out, they're thinking, okay, what are going to be my arrangements, or do I just go after the job at home? Damian, your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. Why put yourself through the strain and expectations that go with first interview, second interview, third interview to only find out that you can't accept the job because of your personal circumstances. And also, I'm seeing this huge trend in position postings where they clearly say
Mhm.
work from home,
Yeah.
and going with what Daisy said about thinking outside of the box. Sometimes, you get so laser focused in trying to
Mhm.
find a job where you are geographically that you don't even think about all of the other places in the world where you could be working. We have a friend who was a chief financial officer. She lost her job and now she works for a company in California and just loves it. Uh, Making more money, oh, by the way, than she was before. So, yeah, I think we as career experts, our duty is to open the eyes and to enable folks to see that there are other options that they might not have even thought of in the rush to find a job.
Mhm.
Yes. And I remember, as Damien, you well know, and Daisy, you too, the past 2 years, I've been saying job search is a lifestyle now. And being that
Mhm.
when the
Mhm.
pandemic came along, that pretty much says it. So instead of putting your career first and what you want as a career, you're now thinking about your life first,
Mhm.
because that is going to be the driving force. So that is probably the most major paradigm shift of everything, is that now you got to look at your life and going, what career will fit my life? Not
Mhm.
always now that my career needs to fit my life, or vice versa. You know what I'm saying, Daisy?
Yes, absolutely. And just to go back to what Elaine, the question Elaine was asking, that's where research would come in. Because as Damien said, there are job postings that are specifically saying whether it's a remote job or whether it's a flexible arrangement. So that's great. The other thing, in fact, I have a client who I was coaching last week, and she asked me that very question. She said, when I go in for the interview, should I tell them I'm looking for a remote work opportunity? And I said two things. One, you should tell them, but even before you get to that employer, do some research to find out what their policies are. Phone them up to find out, what the policies are, and will it fit your needs? And that's key. It's a matter of, and Mark, to tie into what you're saying, it's about the lifestyle. I
Mhm.
mean, with this pandemic, it has put everything in perspective. And what we thought was important, what we thought was, what, my job takes priority and I can be here from 10 to 10. With this pandemic, we realize now we need to put our life in we need to compartmentalize our lives. And the lifestyle is important. It's not just about the money. And the other thing too is job seekers are now realizing that they want to work with companies that have a purpose. It's
Ah,
not, yeah, it's not only, yes, you're great, you can pay me well, but we have become more empathetic to our neighbors, our co-workers, everybody. And job seekers need, employers need to realize that there are employees who will determine whether or not they work with a company who, one, really, instead of just issuing performative statements about certain things, if they walk the talk. So that's going to be important as well.
Yeah, and Damian, you've said this before, and I've even written a couple of articles about how core values are important to the person and to the company.
Mhm.
That really it is a beneficial for both, a win-win for both. If the employer finds the employee and the employee finds the employer, that where their core values match, which includes family and
mhm.
things that life that include is inclusive of life as we know it now, as opposed to where we know it in the post pandemic.
Absolutely. Many of the people that I'm working with now, they may not say it this way, but there's two thoughts. The first one is this time I'm going to do it right. And then the second one is uh, it is the mission, not the money. And so
Mhm.
tying into what everybody has been saying, folks really do want to work for a company with that has values, and I think, as Daisy said, walks the talk. Because unlike any other thing that's happened in America, with perhaps the exception of 9/11, uh, it has changed people. Relatives, family have died. Um, the world ground to a halt.
Mhm.
All of a sudden, you're at home and you're looking at your entire life, and you realize that your job is extremely important, but it's only one part of your life.
Mhm.
And if you're in a situation where your your job demands 95% of you, then after this time alone and away from the office, you most probably have reevaluated where you are and where you want to go next. And I believe that companies need to be sensitive to this, mission driven, or again, there's going to be an exodus, not of the people that are so, but again of your
Mhm.
up and coming, and your leaders will go and gravitate to companies where they walk the talk.
Yeah, and I just want to take a second to blush here that Elaine likes my hat today. But 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 I really think though from a strategic point of view, job seekers are going to really, and they really, if there's not any other point in your life right now, if you're a job seeker, you should start having not just a target list, but you should also have a target list and know specifically what you want before you start marching out there and start. And hopefully, you're not spraying and praying, as we've talked about on this show
Mhm.
many times. But, but ultimately, I hope that job seekers, Daisy, are considering, even along if you don't even have an idea or inkling that you'll be moving on, that maybe you'll now start taking note of the companies that are being more family centric, value focused, and
Mhm.
all those things we just talked about.
Yes, absolutely. Those are very important. But another thing that job seekers should be doing as well is to either engage in reskilling or upskilling.
Mhm.
And it does not mean that you have to go into university for another a whole year. You can earn micro credentials to keep up with what's happening out there, and that allows you, it arms you with additional skills to say, here I am, I
Hmm.
am ready for this role. So it's all well and good if we talk about what the employer needs to provide, but as job seekers, we have to do our part as well.
Yeah.
Make sure you're ready. Make sure you have the skills that are required. Don't be afraid that artificial intelligence is going to take away your job, because that's not true. Don't buy into that,
Right.
but
Yeah.
focus on building up your skills base so that when the employer is looking for people with your skills, you can say, and here is my value add. I learned data analytics while I was off. While the pandemic was raging, I was busy earning micro credentials or something like that. So
Mhm.
job seekers they need to arm themselves within the skills that are necessary.
Yeah,
Good.
two terms I'm beginning to hear a lot more, and Damon, you can comment on this. The fact that we're talking about upskilling and reskilling,
Mhm.
Mhm.
those are two terms that we're hearing a lot of. Another one that I think that's on the horizon that we're going to probably hear more about, and that's probably becoming a part of our lexicon, is future proofing. For the fact that now you just can't think about your job search for the next job. You got to think it for your entire career and have a strategy. I mean, think of it. You and the reason why I've already said job search is a lifestyle is that really you can upskill and reskill 20 minutes to 30 minutes a day,
Absolutely.
which is a small fraction of 168 hours per week. And we're not even, we don't, we could even exclude Saturday and Sunday, but
Mhm.
really it is about building up a little bit by little bit, especially while you have leverage, while you have the job, right? That's ultimately that you have the
Mhm.
most leverage while you're employed. But even as someone who's not employed at this particular time, and you have a small little window to where you can go ahead and start moving forward, you just can't think about that next job only because what ifs come into play, right?
Mhm.
Damien, your thoughts?
Oh, I absolutely agree. A individual who has a job, it is their responsibility to continually retool, retrain,
Mhm.
relearn all of the things that are important for them to be successful in their career track. Not only does it help you, the individual, and I love the term you're future proofing
Mhm.
yourself,
Yeah.
but that doesn't go unnoticed by your employer. Employers love to have early adapters. And
Mhm.
if you have the reputation of being an early adapter, not only is that helpful while you're working, but it's also helpful when you're looking for a job because that basically says, I'm the type of person that seizes opportunity as I see it and accept the personal responsibility. You don't have to prod me to learn something new. I'm already on it. And people that don't constantly learn stagnate faster now than I've ever seen. There is no such thing as just being able to glide through a career because you're going to be picked out and hit when there are reorganizations, not because it's you, but someone with your skill set is so easy to replace,
Exactly.
regardless of what your talent may be. So, yes. And one final thought,
Mhm.
anyone who has not spent their time reskilling, whether they were working or not during the pandemic, at some point this past 15 months, you will be asked to account for how
Mhm.
did you spend your time.
Spend your time. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
America's infrastructure is built, and I would say the world infrastructure, as far as careers, is built on certain industries, and every industry is going to take a hit at some particular point. If we haven't learned
Mhm.
anything in the past 10 years, is that any industry can make could take a big hit and not just lose jobs, but could affect the world's economy. So,
Mhm.
really, Daisy, when it comes to all of that, we can't forget how networking really is the information bank that we really need to have, not just so we
Mhm.
can connect and get referrals, but that also helps us uh, help informs us what we need to learn and what will get us to the next place in our careers.
Absolutely, absolutely. Networking is so important. And people look at networking sometimes and think, "Oh my God, I can't be bothered with this." All right, I don't want to call Damien to ask him anything. But if you don't reach out, Damien won't know that he'll be able to help you. And there's the other side to networking as well, is that it's a two-way street. You may
Mhm.
know if a recruiter is looking for someone in a particular field and you know that person, recommend that person to that recruiter because you never know what might happen. That recruiter might remember you, and if they're looking for somebody they know of somebody who is looking for someone with your skill sets, then they're going to remember you. So networking is very important, and it's reaching out to people, but have a purpose. Don't just send an email or a LinkedIn invitation and say, "Oh, Dave, oh, Mark, I would love to talk. I'm looking at job and I would love to speak to you." People get turned off. You have to be
Mhm.
specific. What exactly do you want to connect with Mark for? What information does Mark have that you need to learn? And be very strategic in doing that. But just to go back a minute to, we're talking about reskilling,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
job seekers are really, really doing that. The same Price Waterhouse Coopers report I read, it says 40% of workers, of employees, are engaged in reskilling.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And 70, I think it's 74% have said that their professional responsibility, they bear their professional responsibility. So yes, they're not totally depending on the employer to do that. So when you have people who are engaged, are so motivated to build themselves up, they're the ones who are going to be able to stand out and can literally negotiate positions and pay, and pet positions and compensation, and all of that. Yes, I just thought I didn't want us to miss that part, that a lot of employees are working behind the scenes to reskill, because again, they want to future proof their
Yeah,
career, whatever that looks like, whatever the future of work will look like. They want to be at the forefront.
Mhm.
well, really, your reskilling and your upskilling and your networking, you know, knowing that there is going to be something that will come along the way that will be an obstacle. That's going to be inevitable. I don't know anybody who hasn't faced that in their career. I don't know anybody who has had a smooth ride to the top, so to speak.
Mhm.
Everybody's has faced some turbulence. But one of the things I would do want to talk about, because it's related so much to what we have discussed online and here this today and also offline, for the fact that there is that exodus and that uh, job seekers are refusing to take the minimum jobs that they used to take. But you just kind of wonder though. I think the Great Resignation, as they're beginning to call it now, it's kind of real. But really, you just kind of wonder when you hear the employers chime in. Is this a game of Parcheesi that they're playing, or that we're all playing? That if you do this, then I'm going to do this, and it becomes this game, almost like it was last recession. So, should job seekers just, and I think I've already answered this, but how important it is for the job seekers to focus in for not just now and the future, uh, as opposed to just focusing in on that one. I mean, yeah, we need to focus on one thing at a time, but I think it's really important that you kind of take a multi-level look at what we are. You, Damien, your thoughts?
Yes. Is the Great Resignation real? Yeah, I believe so. And the reason why is all of our lives were interrupted in a very traumatic way. And when you encounter something that impacts you, especially if you were directly impacted by COVID, it gives you a chance to look at your life. And if you're in a toxic work uh, environment, or you don't like your boss or whatever, um, I think a lot of people have made up their mind and have said enough is enough, and hopefully they're not just going to walk in, hand their resignation, and leave. Hopefully they will take the time to do a measured and kind of under the radar job search. But I do know folks that have just said, that's it, I'm done, and boom, handed in their resignation letter and now are scrambling to find a job. But no, I think it's very real, and I think it was triggered directly by the pandemic in a way that no other trend could have done.
Yeah. Daisy, are companies exposed in their whereabouts or the way they do business by by the worst thing that happens? You've been through a couple of recessions now as a career coach and a career expert. What are your thoughts about that?
Now, what was the question? Can you repeat?
No, my question is, what are you, I mean, you've been through a couple of recessions now, and
Mhm.
do companies expose themselves for who they really are during the worst of times?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, they do. Because they're, especially now, and of all the recessions, I think this one has really, really hit home. And
Mhm.
I go back to what I said earlier about putting things in perspective. And yes, they're able to pay their employees. But like Damian was saying, the employees are saying, I have put up with this for too long. There are other opportunities out there that I'm going to explore. And so it's no longer, by and large, it's no longer the employer who is holding the handle of the knife and say, oh, well, you have to fit into this routine. No, it's not going to happen. And one of the things I just read this week from a newsletter I subscribe to called the Broad Street, and it's one of the
Mhm.
Fortune newsletters. What they
Mhm.
said is that harassment has increased during COVID. So even though we are working from home, that did not deter. And harassment in terms of, again, calling your employee, I need this report and I need it like yesterday, not giving them
Mhm.
the time that they need to do what they need to do. So we are in a serious time now. And yes, the great resignation, it's happening. But I want to adopt a kind of wait and see attitude to that. So it's happening on one side for different reasons. But we have to also look at it from another angle. How many employees can afford to just up and go?
Mhm.
Mhm.
We
Yeah.
have to be practical. We have to be practical. So some people cannot do that. So it's real in some cases, and we can't put it on the back burner, but we also have to put it in perspective. Some people would love to resign, but for
Mhm.
various reasons, they can't. And the other thing, I alluded to that earlier, when we speak of the great resignation, and returning to not wanting to return to what was normal, meaning the 9 to 5, we have to be careful of what we get in return, because this 24-hour available to my employer kind of thing, that could become the norm. And do we want that? which employee is going to want that to be available to the employer 24/7, pretty much? So because we're asking, employers are asking people to fit into what they think is going to be the norm for them. Employees have to think back on it to say, do I really want that? And if that's what's going to happen, then you're going to see the great resignation happening again.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly, and I think job seekers, they're thinking more strategically. Again, suggesting that you do take the time out to not just look at the company's website and look at the LinkedIn profile, that you're actually trying to talk to the employees of the company so you can find
Mhm.
out what the real time uh, um, behavior is of the company, and are they true. And it's easy for anybody to put to say all the right things, but do you actually do the right things? And
Mhm.
that's why we emphasize so much that you do the research and talking to employees, the former employees, even if you
Mhm.
can,
Mhm.
so that you can find out how someone, their leadership style, do they make it comfortable? Do they rave about it? And really expect candor, expect real time honesty about
Mhm.
it, because those are the things that are going to determine more so, and even put more weight on the culture aspect in that way, as opposed to whether how much money somebody's offering.
Yeah.
Damien, your thoughts?
Yeah, a couple kind of dropping back to what Daisy was saying. Uh,
Mhm.
yeah, there are employers that will expect you to be available 24/7. I know of a director in town here that would send out a memo at 11:30 at night and expect a response no later than 2 a.m. And if you went
Mm.
into work and had not responded to the memo, she read you the riot act. So there are those people out there
Mhm.
within an organization that believe you should be available 24/7, but you as an employee or potential employee can set up barriers. You just have to be willing to accept the consequences. Um, the other thought that I had is for those who go back to work, they've made the decision to resign but can't afford to. What I would like to say to them is remember, you always are in control. The employer does not own you.
Mhm.
It sounds to me like if you are a part of the Great Resignation, in addition to saying enough is enough, you have made a lifestyle change. And now it's just a matter of time before it happens. And I would like to encourage you to keep on going. And more importantly, not to feel trapped or desperate because you've already checked out of the building. You just haven't left
Yeah.
yet.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
and that could be kind of tough decisions to make, and people aren't used to thinking that way. And I don't know if they're going to really grasp a whole what that really means until they get into that situation and find out what the gravity is there. Elaine asks, as a result of the pandemic, do you see any new careers arising? That's a handful question, I think
Mhm.
itself, because we are still waiting for what AI is going to do, so to speak.
Mhm.
And I don't mean Allen Iverson either, but I
Yeah.
think for the for for people knowing what AI is, artificial intelligence. But I think what I've seen, and I've read a story recently where they talk about how artificial intelligence is going to be more of a complementary tool in a way to do business, and maybe to get machinery to do a lot of the tedious, dirty work, as opposed to just replacing employees. So it's going to be interesting to see how all that's going to turn out. But do we really think that there's any significance in careers that are going to be arising? Any thoughts on that, Daisy?
I think any careers in anything to do with healthcare,
Hmm.
that's going to be a growing field. I know right here
Yeah.
in Canada, we have had nurses, for example, and other healthcare professionals moving from one province to the other to help out in the, with the pandemic and all of that. So anybody who is interested in, I definitely know that that's going to be a growing field. So anybody who is starting out or anybody who is switching careers right now might want to think of healthcare. And it doesn't, I'm going to say the health sector. I'm not saying, okay, now it's time for you to do an, 8 year and go become a doctor. I mean, you can do that fine. But
Yeah.
there are also what we would term non-essential healthcare people. It could be the personal support worker who is going to go home to work with somebody at home, or to work in a senior's home, or something like that. So definitely I see that happening. But I think job seekers just need to have their antennas out. It's not a time to just relax. I think it's a great time now, actually, because out of all this chaos, out of all this mess, great things can happen. And it's time, job seekers can look back and say, okay, what's happening in that industry? Who is in that industry that I can reach out to ask them questions? And that's where informational interviews slash career conversations come up. You want to know what's happening there, go out and connect with people, ask them questions, go there, call them up with specific questions around what are the skills necessary to succeed in this role. Why have you been in this role for such a long time? What are the downsides? Because all those questions will help you to determine whether you want to go in that direction, or whether you may hear something that says, wow, no, 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 I don't want to be in that particular sector. So it's
Mhm.
a great time now to explore and find out what's happening.
Yeah, especially if you're in college. Really, all the ones, but college has been known to you find something, and then then you can ride it for the rest of your life. We know that's gone and that's done. But I think more of the exploration part is definitely a big piece. But I think it's
Mhm.
also a part for the somebody who's in the mid careers and perhaps you're a little bit older. It's never too late to find something that you like and be able to change and be even adaptable because you've been down the road and you kind of know how to adapt to different workplaces and different cultures and environment. Any last thoughts on that, Damien, before we wrap it up here?
Yeah, just real quick, and this is just going by intuition. If a company is truly going to walk the talk, if the company has been dramatically impacted by COVID, if the company is going to live their values, I would see a type of position where there would be a kind of a keeper of the keys. And what I mean by that is it probably would be working hand in hand, or if not the person that is in charge of diversity and inclusion within an organization,
Hmm.
someone that will challenge people when they go off skill, or not off
Mhm.
skill, but away from the values of the organization. And I have seen this before when there have been people that have been in charge of maintaining the culture. And another spot that may come back, I don't know, might be training. But again, that is another one that I'm not. I have no data for
Mhm.
either. But again, so much has happened, and this is an evolving situation. But those are the two areas that came to mind when
Mhm.
I'm sorry, when Elaine asked about any new
Mhm.
careers arising.
Yes, that's true. The diversity, equity, and inclusion is big.
Mhm.
The
Oh
job,
yeah,
the job
it's really
postings
big.
there, for DEI professionals is big.
And
So
it's
yes.
And it's funny you should mention that, but I think even as a job seeker, a person of color, a black person, Job Right, a recent study, the Job Seeker Nation study, I got a chance to talk to two of their people on the other show, and 42% of people that they surveyed said that they would not work for a company that is not diverse,
Hmm.
that they're willing to look for other places to work. So I think in that way, job search has become really real, because now we're talking about if I don't see somebody that looks like me that works for your company, I'm not going to be all that attracted to your
That's
company.
right.
Or if you're not, I'm used to working in a diverse environment and I prefer diversity, but if you're not diverse, you're not going to really succeed all that much, because it shows that diverse companies are the winners of the best clients in the world. So
Hmm.
I'm
Absolutely.
going to end it right here. It is 12:59 or 1:59, depending upon where you are. Uh, Daisy, thank you so much for joining us here. We loved having you. This was quite a. We didn't even get through the whole outline, which I
I
called
know.
was going to
I
happen.
know. Well, thank you so much for having me. This has really been a learning experience for me as well. Just listening to both of you talk about the different perspectives of the job search, and we hope that our listeners, wherever they are, have picked up some tips that will help them.
Yes. Let me give a quick shout out before I ask Damian what he's got coming up next. Elaine, of course, Debria, all those always joining us. Elizabeth came back. Thank you very much. And there's some other folks here to get a chance to see who it was. But Damian, what do you got coming up next?
I have a couple seminars that I will be doing, and there are several articles that I am going to be a part of. One thing, real quick, Debria, if you want to have a off-show conversation about the comment you made about skills versus education, please feel free to contact me on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
As always, Mark, thank you. Daisy, thank you. Phenomenal, phenomenal.
Thank you.
Yes,
So
yes, great show. And Daisy, you got anything coming up?
No, not at the moment. In fact, I have been preparing to do my ACC, which is the Associate Certified Coach designation for
Oh,
ICF.
okay.
So that
Okay.
has been taking a bit of my time. I've been dragging on this for a long time. So I'm working on that, but nothing specific. I just happen to be quite busy with my normal work these days. So yeah, nothing
Yeah,
specific right now.
understood. I will be doing a presentation if you're on Clubhouse June 21st. Look for my presentation. You should see the promo going out sometime next week. I'll be doing it on a why you should stay in job search mode. And also, I got some great content that is going to come out. I'm saying my own content's a little great because I'm doing this in a different way that
Mhm.
is kind of old school, but it's going to be kind of fun in the way I'm going to be presenting it. So that would be great to be sure you give Damian hit on the DMs. But in the meantime, we thank you for joining us here on the Modern Job Search Checklist. Join us next week. We're going to have recruiter Jeff Altman with us. Which is an old friend of Damian and mine. And we've both been on his podcast at one time or another. If you want to get a head start, check out Jeff Altman. His site, I can't think of the name, but if you go to his profile on LinkedIn, you're going to find that he has like over 1,500 videos, I think,
Ooh.
yeah.
and like a couple of thousand pieces of content. They are all for free to help you with your job search. And he really has been a warrior in the job search realm for a long particular time. So I wanted him to come on the show, join us. In the meantime, thank you very much. Thank you, Daisy. Thank you, Damien. Thank you
Thank you.
all for joining us. You all have a great day.
Yeah, you too. Thanks.